Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I am showing you a very exciting new Claydol card, which is coming out in the Celestial Storm expansion of the Pokemon trading card game this August. Now, whenever we say Claydol, let's just get this right out the way at the beginning. Whenever we say Claydol, obviously we are going to think of the Great Encounters Claydol. One of the very, very best cards that has ever been released in the history of the Pokemon trading card game. Over the top, crazy, broken good would be an understatement to how good that card would be. That card, I wouldn't really feel comfortable giving it 5 Wassies, because that would seem like I was being really overly pessimistic. So, just at the beginning here, no, it's not as good as that Claydol. And if it was, it would have been the very first video I made when this set started leaking, and it would have been the clickbaitiest title you've ever seen, and it still wouldn't have done the card justice. So it's not that good. But it's a very interesting card, and one I actually like very much indeed. So, it is a fighting Pokemon, and fighting is good right now. You can use Brooklet Hill to search out your Baltoy. Yay! And you've got strong energy, although admittedly only for a very short period of time before the rotation. And you've got Diancie Prism Star to do a bit of extra damage. And of course, you're hitting weakness against stuff like Zoroark, and like Silvally, which I do expect to see a bit of an increase in play of in the not too distant future. So being a fighting Pokemon at the moment, A-OK by me. 110 HP is low for a stage 2. I mean, decent basics like Tapu Koko Promo have 110 HP. We ain't excited by the HP. Retreat cost of 2 sucks because after rotation it's not going to be good enough to use a skateboard. You'll still have a retreat cost of 1. And a weakness to grass is largely irrelevant because the good grass Pokemon at the moment are Tapu Bulu and Golisopod, and they'll both be getting a fairly easy one-hit KO regardless of the weakness, so it doesn't really matter. Whoopsie daisy. Now, with the basics out of the way, and the basics ain't looking too bad, we can start looking at the attacks. And the first attack is very useful. 1 colorless energy, 20 damage, flip a coin if heads your opponent's active Pokemon is paralyzed. We've seen the flip a coin if heads they're paralyzed time and time again. I mean, we saw it on Froakie in Greninja decks for a very long time, although we've now got a 70 HP Froakie, so that Froakie's gone now. But the thing is, this does 20 damage while potentially paralyzing. You add a choice band and weakness on something like a Zoroark, and you're doing 100 damage while potentially paralyzing. And this, of course, is where I give my obligatory reference to the Victini from Guardians Rising, which will mean that you get to reflip if you hit a Tails, giving you a 75% chance of getting that paralysis. It's a nice little attack. It's not often the one you're going to want to use, but for buying a couple of turns, getting a bit of damage on there, I'm all in favour. The one thing I will say here, and this does make me kind of sad, paralysis is a whole heap worse than it has been in the past. I mentioned a skateboard earlier. Well, when the rotation hits, Floatstone's rotating. So any deck that plays a bunch of single retreat Pokemon, and there will be a few of them, are instantly going to switch it out for a skateboard. Which not only reduces retreat cost by 1, not as good as Floatstone, but better than nothing, but it also allows you to retreat if they're asleep or paralyzed, the Pokemon to which it's attached. At the moment, no one's playing this because Floatstone's way too good. But when Floatstone goes away, this comes in, and it makes paralysis much less good. Then you add in the fact that everyone's playing Guzma at the moment, which has a built-in switch, and we're basically sitting there going, it is really easy to get around stuff like paralysis at the moment. So look, it's still a decent attack for buying turns. Your opponent's not always going to have a skateboard or Guzma. And it can do decent damage, especially if you're hitting for weakness. But the reality is, you're just not going to be able to get this to stick often enough to make it an amazing attack. My apologies. Also, right, and it's not the first Pokemon that's done this, and in fact, the Baltoy has the same attack, except it's for a double colorless energy, not a single, otherwise it's exactly the same, including the name Confusion, that has a 50% chance to paralyze. And it's called Confusion. Quite frankly, I am confused. More literally, I am not terribly impressed. But you can't have it all, ladies and gentlemen. The attack I'm really excited about is actually the second one here. Now, it is for a fighting double colourless, which is slightly more expensive than we would like. It does 40 damage for each Steven's decision in your discard pile, which might be called Steven's Advice or Steven's Resolve, but David goes for Steven's Decision, so that's the one that we are going to do. It's one we're going to use. I'm sticking to it. You can't stop me. Well, I mean, maybe with hurtful words, but please don't, ladies and gentlemen. Remember the cardinal rule. Be nice. So anyway, Claydol here. It does 40 damage for each Steven's Decision in your discard pile. And Steven's Decision is amazing. It says, search for any free cards, and then your turn ends. And then we did look at the meta gross the other day. I'll try and pop a link to this one in the description. But long story short, the meta gross, when it's in the active, you can use Steven's Decision without having to end your turn, making meta gross great. Well, this is a very similar kind of thing. It's working off Steven here, but it's got to be in your discard pile. So I suppose that gives us two options. Option the first, we just discard a bunch of Steven's Decision. Using stuff like Ultra Ball, or just before rotation, we can use Professor Sycamore, whacking them all in the discard, so we can do 160 damage for 2 energy. I say 2 energy because, of course, you can use double colourless energy here. And let's be clear, right? 160 for fighting double colourless is great. Think about something like Ho-Oh, which does 180 on a 2-prize GX for fire colourless. 4 attachments. This is 2 attachments, 160. So there shouldn't be any argument here that the amount of damage is great. You whack on a choice band, you're up to 190, and there's a whole bunch of super relevant Pokemon like Boswell, and like Ultra Necrozma, and like Duskmane Necrozma, which are instantly KO'd here. It is a great amount of damage. Now, annoyingly, it doesn't get up to 210 and get stuff like Golisopod, but then again, the most relevant Pokemon that has 210 at the moment is Zoroark, that you're hitting for weakness anyway. And if you were to play Forbidden Shrine, which does put 10 damage on all Pokemon EXs and GXs between turns, then you'd be up to 200 and getting stuff like Espeon and Sylveon. My point here is, this is a great amount of damage for a very affordable attack cost, once you've got Steven's Decision in your discard pile. So I'm okay with this. The attack cost is slightly more than we would like, but because of the damage we're doing, we are okay with it. Just for chucking them in your discard pile, because let's face it, you're going to want 1 for the early game Tapu Lele anyway, so you just play 4, and then like we've been playing 4 Bridget lately, and clearly Steven's Decision is going to replace Bridget. If you play 4 of them, you're more likely to have it turn 1 without having to resort to using a Tapu Lele, and then you can just sit there and rock in the early game, discard the rest of them, and then you're off and rolling. It sounds good to me, although the 2 energy cost and the fact that you've got quite low HP is going to be a bit of a pain. Also, right, I probably should have mentioned this a second ago, but when I was talking about it's harder to get up to 210, no it's not. Play a single Diancie Prism Star, then you're hitting 210 for free energy. That's actually really good. That's like crazy good. It's just, it's a little bit expensive and it's a little bit vulnerable. The other thing, of course, you can do is just play it in a Metagross deck. Have Metagross sitting there, using Steven's Decision, and then when you're out of Steven's Decision, and bearing in mind Metagross is good, but it's not quite as powerful as you'd like as an attacker, you then bring in Claydol afterwards and go, ha ha ha, in your face, and then you're off and rolling. I like Claydol. It's not as good as a Great Encounters Claydol. I told you that right at the beginning of the video. But with a choice band and a Diancie Prism Star and 4 Steven's Decision in the discard pile, does 210 for 2 energy attachments on a non-GX. More expensive than we would like. You're not going to be able to have a Claydol every turn. That kind of sucks. Although maybe you'll get lucky with your energy attachments. Maybe your opponent won't be able to KO your active Metagross, giving you a few extra turns to get a bunch of Claydol set up. And then you're off and rolling. It's not going to be that difficult to get 4 supporters in your discard, although they could be prized. That would be a pain. Do remember Gladion. And it's, although you won't be able to Gladion and then play Steven's Decision, that's 2 supporters in 1 turn. That's naughty. And it's not going to be that difficult to find Diancie Prism Star, especially with Brooklet Hill in the format. It's not going to be that difficult to find a choice band. This is not the most reliable attacker ever, but it does 210 for 2 energy attachments on a single prize Pokemon. And it works really nicely with Metagross that we like. Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this is worth a test, and I'm giving it between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. I am a big fan of this. I don't think it's perfect. And I do think it's not going to be as easy to use as you would like every single game. But I absolutely stand by this as a card with a huge amount of potential, which could win a lot of games, and which, especially with something like Metagross, could be a genuinely good deck. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to hear from you, lovely ladies and gentlemen, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and so on, then head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do just that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.